Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strife's Sanctum. My name is Citizen Strife, and this week I've got a lot of ice packs. I'm in a bit of a rush. I gotta work a little later. So I'm holding ice packs because I'm doing a stream in like half an hour or whatever, or working out or something anyway. But you might hear some shuffling noises. It's just ice packs because hands are delicate things. Anyway, this week's episode is going to be the Halloween episode, and the last couple of years I've done either Halloween month or Halloween week, and it came up anime again this year, so I'm going to talk about one that I could do right off the top of my head, and that is Witch Hunter Robin. Now, this was one of those ones, like, early on when I started becoming a big anime fan. I was watching Adult Swim, the 2002, 2003, 2004 situation. You know, I was heavily into anime starting around that time, and I would tape shows all the time. Because remember, we had VHSs back then. So we had to tape the things that we wanted to record. No DVRs or some shit. Don't you feel old? Do we even use CDs anymore? Anyway, not if we can't help it. Anyway, Witch Hunter Robin was not the best thing I've ever seen, but it was definitely something that's memorable, especially given the subject matter and what they were going for. And just the look and feel of the show. Is it the best thing ever? No. But it's definitely something that I would always watch, and I always liked going back to it. Last time I rewatched it was about 3 to 5 years ago. But again, like I said, I'd watched it like 5 or 6 times because I'd taped it. You know, because I had stuff like Fooly Cooley, Loop on the Third, Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, that stuff. I had like 50 videos worth of 6 hours of footage. So I had anime to spare. So this was one I would always rewatch, and I could do it and remember it. And I figured for Halloween's sake, this was going to come up eventually, and I was going to revel in it. It's still on Crunchyroll, thank God, because some stuff isn't. Some stuff is on High Dive, or some stuff is on Netflix, or some stuff like Darker Than Black or Hellgirl is in Aniplex jail somewhere, or just not accessible, which is why I haven't really reviewed those. I love Darker Than Black, and I can't really justify it because unless you've seen it, you don't really have access to it anymore. I don't fucking know where it's at. Maybe it's on Hulu or some... because everything's scattershot now. It's unfortunate. Anyway, Witch Hunter Robin. Let me get back on track before I get stupid. If anybody wonders why I watch Crunchyroll all the time, it's because thousands of shows are on there for, you know, for better or for worse. Anyway, so Witch Hunter Robin was an Adult Swim fixture. It wasn't the biggest show. I don't think even now people are like, oh my god, that was the best thing I ever saw. It was great. The thing I remember most is the cast and the visual style, because it was a procedural crime drama, and they went with the procedural very hard. The same kind of way that Ghost in the Shell standalone complex is very slow and stiff and kind of boring in spots. Witch Hunter Robin kind of feels that same way. I remember talking, I forget which show it was. I want to say it was Ergo Proxy, but it could have been something else, where a lot of the show is shown through faces and expressions. And maybe it's a budgeting thing, maybe it was a style choice, but Witch Hunter Robin really exemplified that. They focused on the characters and the faces a lot. They focused on the environments a lot. Kind of like a gothic crime drama thing. Everybody is like wearing black or subdued colors. Everything's very muted. Everything, when there is music, it's only when it's very purposeful. The music's pretty good. But really what's selling the show is the characters, the casting that they got. For me, it was the English version, as I always say. But again, this is as good a dub cast as you're going to get, because you do have like newer actors that are good. You do have like the early 2010s or mid 2010s, but really like that early 2000s crop of actors, and some of them, if not all of them, are still going today in some form or fashion. Like I could rattle off the names and you'd be like, oh yeah, of course. But yeah, this was that time where I was like, oh god, this is pretty good stuff. And the characters that they portray, while not always the most interesting, or I would say predictable in most cases, they do well enough. And I do want to mention it. So I'll go plot and characters. I don't know if I want to spoil it. I mean, again, it's a 20-year-old show, and it's not that amazing of a thing, but there is still stuff, if you've never seen it, like you'd be like, oh, I still want to watch this and not spoil it. So I'm probably going to try and not spoil too much, but at the same time, there are things I do have to. So consider this kind of a halvesies spoilerific view, because some of the characters don't show up right away. But the main character is Robin Senna, voiced by Carrie Walgren, who was Haruko in Fooly Cooly. She was... God, I can't even think... she was in Wolf's Rain. She was in Heat Guy J. Just all manner of things. And I'm thinking way, way back. The most recent thing I remember her being in, I think, was that villain character in Bloodstained. So they got her to do that one. It's like the I forget who the main character, not the main villain with it, like a moose head on her stomach, and she looks like a moon-faced lady. I forget what her name is. You'd know it if you remember it. Anyway, so she plays Robin, who is being tasked with joining STNJ, a branch of this hunt organization. So Solomon is hunting witches, and she has a power that isn't revealed until late. But for whatever reason or another, she gets like misplaced and leaves and doesn't know where to go. Goes to a cafe and is like, I don't know where the frick I'm going, so I'll just hang there. She's very like dutiful and does her thing because she was in a convent for a while. So she basically just doesn't like have agency, but she's not a doormat. It's more that she's like, well, I just don't want to do anything. So the first episode is just all of the characters trying to figure out, okay, we're on a hunt, we're doing a thing. And a lot of the early, like 10 first episodes are hunt of the day. So you've got the people in the office doing their thing with their powers, if they have them, or their special, skills. And they're looking for witches or craft users. It's weird because they keep saying craft users. They mean witches, because witches develop from genetic manipulation or genetic powers, essentially, in this universe. So they're called seeds, people who awaken to powers, whether from birth or as they age. And not everybody who has, seeds manifest into witches, but they know that that's something that could be a threat to them. So by and large, the characters are either witches or are familiar with witches, and they have to use this special stuff called Orbo that diminishes their own powers, but it also acts as kind of a vaccine or a protection against whatever weird powers that end up getting used against them. So some of them carry like little necklaces with Orbo as a shield. Some of them have Orbo guns, like air guns with Orbo bullets that are like these green goo things, and you shoot the witches with them and their powers go away and you can get rid of them. So the idea is to not kill them if you can help it. Not always the case, but again, the first 10 episodes are mostly to establish the characters and establish like the general vibe of the show, which is nice, because this is back when 26 episodes was the standard, 24 to 26. You'll still get that, but it's mostly split into 12 seasons now. So going back, it's definitely different getting a 26 episode show. That was what we had back then, was mostly 26. So they had the time to develop little bits about the characters and things. And by and large, the characters are still interesting. The main secondary protagonist is Amon, voiced by Crispin Freeman. So, like I said, super good casting here. As this kind of gruff, older guy, doesn't really play well with others. And he's just kind of, every Crispin Freeman character who's not the super bad guy. He's just gruff and annoyed and pissed off all the time. But not in the, I hate you, it's the quiet, like Sephiroth looking kind of thing, It's Sephiroth with black hair. That's essentially what he's doing, is really kind of annoyed, really stoic, really aloof, but, not in an antagonistic way. He'll joke around, but mostly not. He's there to act as kind of like, I'm the leader, but not really. Maybe the field leader, essentially. So he knows what the hell he's doing, and he can do it just fine. We got Haruto Sakaki, who is voiced by Johnny Young Bosch. Again, just amazing casting. God. Imagine when we had this level of talent back then. Anyway, so Sakaki is just, I'm Johnny Storm. I'm whatever. I'm brash. I'm whatever. He's the normal protagonist dude if he was Johnny Storm from the Fantastic Four. Just little gruff, little annoyed, but always little reckless. That was the word I was searching for. Reckless in a way. Because the show's not really a comedy, you don't really have him going off the wall and doing things. It's more that he's inexperienced and kind of dumb, So he thinks that Robin is going to replace him, or he's going to get replaced, or he can't really do like all the fun stuff that some of the other characters can do, or he's not as, higher end on the food chain. So he's just kind of acting out a little bit. So again, it's not really played upon. If this was more of a comedy, which this is not, they probably would have played that up for laughs, and it would probably have been annoying. But again, this guy plays his part fine. Michael, voiced by Dave Wittenberg, who was Teddy and Kefka. Talk about two different sides of the same coin there. Yes, the original Teddy from Persona 4 and Kefka from the Dissidia games. So you got Michael, who's the hacker, and he can't leave the ST&J. So he plays, hey, I'm the informant. I'm the hacker dude. I'm always standing in front of a computer. I'm hacking stuff. Let me hack stuff. His story is he can't leave for one reason or another. I'm gonna say season 1 or core 1 because that's the best way I could describe it. Mid core 1, you finally realize why he's there and why he's kind of stuck as a prisoner. But that he doesn't get a lot of story other than that, but he's just there as the hacker dude. But nice, and he plays it fast and loose. If anybody does kind of play fast and loose in the cast, he does. Let's see, Miho is voiced by Wendy Lee, and she's actually one of the witches aside from Robin, or craft users. Again, I use the words interchangeably because that's who they are. So Miho's whole thing, if Robin can use fire, which is handy, to burn stuff, Miho has an interesting power. It's called psychometry. I believe that's the word. The idea is that emotions and other feelings are left behind in objects if they were left at crime scenes or just unusable objects, like if you slept in a bed or if you opened a dresser drawer or something like that. So she can tap into those things and reveal feelings. And much like, so, because these are essentially detectives, it's a detective show with that sci-fi witchcraft bend to it. It allows them to either kind of pinpoint where a character was, like when they did a thing, like if they're left over really soon, like if they were left a long time ago, she can kind of tap into these emotions that were left, or things like, oh, was it really a different witch all along? Not exactly pinpoint accuracy, but enough to get the picture. So she can use that ability, and she's also like Amon in the sense that she takes lead in a field most of the time, sometimes to her own detriment if the party gets separated or whatever, but she takes a lot of pride in her work, and is definitely the mother figure of the group, for lack of a better term. And it works because you have a couple characters that are kind of goofy, kind of like younger, as we'll see with Dojima, voiced by Michelle Ruff, who plays it really, really, really dumb. She plays like the Valley Girl, the really stupid, like, I don't give a shit. I'm here because somebody put me here because I'm a kid, because they said, hey, do this job because parents, And she doesn't take her job seriously at all. She's reading fashion magazines. She's always fancy. She looks the fanciest. She's got the best hair, shit like that. There's more to her than meets the eye, but you don't really see it until way later. And it's kind of nice that there are characters like that, so you see things way later. You got some other characters here and there, but mostly you got your main, like, head organization guys that are above the main people, the field agents. But by and large, you get those as your main characters doing hunts, finding witches, learning things. Later on, about 10 or 11 episodes in, things start to pick up a little bit, and I'd say right around episode 13 or 14 is when the real big, like, oh shit's going down, let's go and do that shit. So stuff starts to build. And it does enough. I would say the plot does enough to break out of it still does the Witch of the Day thing up until like episode 20, 22, 23, give or take. But you still learning about the main plot line and what's going on and why people are doing the things that they're doing. And what is Solomon, what is Orbo, what are all these witches, and why do they call them craft users, and kind of the not a lot of socio-economic impacts of things, but enough of them here and there. And because there is an impasse, because people who are witches are ostracized in a way if they're outed, if not killed or detained by this organization. So you get a lot of that, like, I don't like you, you're a witch, you're a jerk, I'm gonna kill you. Sort of stuff like that. It's very underground. Like, of course, it's a highly specialized organization doing highly specialized things. As far as facing off against witches here and there, that's kind of the main through point here. Is they do okay in describing witch powers, and they do have a varied mix. A lot of the time, witches' powers are kind of because, again, this is like early 2000s, so they're not like super flashy. Their method of showing off witch powers, either due to budget constraints or just early animation style with a lot of like shaky cam, not in the same, oh my god, the camera's shaking. It's more that like vibration. So witch powers would be represented mostly by vibration. Then the actual power would show up, whether it would be telepathy or telekinesis or throwing a certain kind of object or breaking stuff and just demolishing it, or fire or whatever. And you get some certain things. Some of it could be elemental. As stated, Robin has fire, and yeah, she does fire things. It's fun. There's a positive and negative to it, because a lot of the witches end up feeling kind of the same, but there's also some unique ones, especially early on, that are kind of neat. Like I said, Robin has fire. Miho has psychometry. That was pretty cool. Or psychometry. I want to say it's psychometry if I remember right. There's a couple episodes in where this guy actually manifests his power to people nearby him. He doesn't have to touch him or anything, so he can actually induce fear in people as a kind of defense mechanism, but they don't know who's actually doing it. So he doesn't out himself. He outs other people as people in weird being afraid situations. So that was kind of neat. There's one where these weird dolls are causing car accidents, How are they doing that? We don't fucking know, but they are. They're taking these like box cutters to people's necks and stabbing them. I mean, that sounds like something from Rosenmaiden now that I think about it. But another one was transfer of life and death energy. So helping people survive through killing somebody else. It's kind of a neat, like, one hand and the other hand, like hand of God and the hand of doom kind of thing. And then way later, once things, shit hits the fan a little bit more, there's also one where this guy's actually hurting you by cutting you, but you don't know how. It turns out to be like invisible wind currents would be the best way I would describe it, or invisible energy currents. Think of the Force, but you could see it coming at you at different angles. That's the way I would describe it. So there are some cool powers at play once they show them and animate them. Obviously, there's elemental things, the basics, But then there are like the really stupid ones, and sometimes the let's face it, they're not going to give you the hardest witches in the first episode. I understand that, but suffice it to say, the first episode, like the dude's power is he's got these sand sigils on the ground, and if somebody walks over them, they trip and fall. Like, what the fuck? Seriously? You're going to manifest an earth and sand power as tripping dudes. How is that going to help you? So, again, it was the first episode. It's not meant to be a threat. I get that, but it is kind of funny. So, by and large, the powers at play are really cool, but they are also really, really, really dumb in spots. That is the only one that I really, really hate, though. But as far as other negatives, and whether it was a stylistic choice or a budget choice, it's the slow animation. It's the stiff faces. There is not a lot of animation to be had. There's enough, and it does look pretty to an extent. But you can definitely tell that it is stiff. This show is gooey as fuck. It is not expressive at all. So because it's a drama, it gets away with it, but it is its own thing. I don't think I've seen anything like it other than Ergo Proxy. That would be the best way I would describe it. I want to say Ergo Proxy was the one where you're doing a lot of like close-ups of faces and things, but I've said this before. There are some shows that specialize. I want to say Spice and Wolf is the same way, but Spice and Wolf did it through character chemistry and stuff like that. Other shows like this do it through other means, but Rich Hunter Robin, because of its stylistic choice, is doing a lot of like, and you'll see that here and there, they're reusing the same assets for certain scenes. If they're doing the same scenes, you'll see the same looks here and there. So it's definitely lower budget, but not to the detriment that it's like, oh my God, we've ran out of our budget. What are we going to do now? No, it's definitely taking what it can and cutting corners, and you can see it, but it's not so much a detriment. But beware that if you're going to watch it, it's just stiff. It's meant to be that way. The villain in the show is a mastermind villain, and I think the twists at play, once you see where they're going, ends up becoming kind of obvious. I do still like the show, but the main crux of what happens and who it does to is something you can see from a mile away. And is that a bad thing? It's more that I hate mastermind villains, okay? And this is the show that does that. I said this about Hellsing Ultimate, where the Mr. the German Nazi dude just kept talking in the chair. Ha! I'm evil, and I'll send other people after you. Same thing here. They'll keep sending people after whomever to do whatever for their thing, and they don't really mount to much as a villain. So, between the plot twists that are pretty obvious and the main villain who is kind of obvious and doesn't really threaten anybody, there's not much, especially considering the witches in the show kind of vary their powers and to some extent are threatening. It really leaves a lot to be desired that the final boss is kind of, But getting back to the good stuff, like I said, for all the faults of the faces and the stiffness, it is a good atmosphere. It's good. Like when the music is there, it's like very subdued. Like if they're in a cafe, it's like really nice and jazzy or slow moving. If it's a hectic fight scene, they'll do a hectic fight scene. Or they'll have no music at all, and it'll just be a standard, show procedural, get the plot going. But they'll have enough ambiance. That's the best way I would put it. It is ambiance. It feels proper. It feels good. The main end theme is always good. I remember that one. I forget the opening theme, because back in the Adult Swim days, they didn't show the openings. They just went right into the shows, which is something I miss, actually. But the ending theme was something I always liked for what little I saw of it. Let's see here. Like I said, I went through kind of the cool powers and stuff. It was neat. And again, the casting choices. The Kerry Walgren, Crispin Freeman, Wendy Lee, Johnny Young Bosch, Dave Wittenberg. Like all of the people in the cast. Even the people that are not the most exciting characters. This was back when it was like, and I get it. Like anime dubs always get the bad rap and whatever. No, right around this time, the early 2000s, yeah, you still had some shitty ones, but by and large, like, you had shows like this, who just going off the cast list, these people were, industry standards for like 10 or 15 years, and to some extent still work today, and still work very well, because I'm not going to look at Michelle Roth in the same way because of Persona 3 and Persona 5, but I'm not going to sit here and go, okay, well, I'm going to shit on her all day because dubs are stupid, But anyway, that's a thing. If you need like a good show with a good casting, which like every character feels like they should, I'm like, oh, yeah, this one has you covered, because there's no bad characters, there's no bad acting, there's no overacting or a stupid shit like that. This is very subdued, very low key. If you want something very low key that, like, for a Halloween or late night viewing kind of thing, you just want, like, I'll get a few episodes here and there while I'm trying to sleep, this shouldn't be too bad. Yeah, this is very good. It's not gonna rock anyone's world, but I still remember it to this day, and whenever I do rewatch it, I definitely enjoy it still. So that was my review of Witch Hunter Robin. So let's see what's on the docket next. So let me load up all the stuff here, because of course I have to do that, because sometimes I forget. All right, so next week is Metal Gear Solid 2. Speaking of old school stuff, that's going to be fun. I've already done an episode of Ascendance of a Bookworm. I think I have that I either have that recorded or I have that as a primer already, so I'm not sure. But I do have that in my head because I rewatched it a few weeks ago, so I'm pretty good for that. Something I'm very interested about is rewatching the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie from 1989-1990. Oh god, I want to rewatch that. That's so good. So that should be a different change of pace kind of thing for me. The week after that is Black Butler, something I've always watched and always enjoyed because I'm one hell of a butler. And then after that will be Master Detective Archives Rain Code. It's a game that I've beaten fairly recently on Twitch, so I'm fairly familiar with it. I also rewatched, I watched it first on YouTube all the way through just to see if I wanted to play it on Twitch, and then I played it on Twitch. So I'm definitely capable of talking about it, and I'm going to enjoy exploring that one. But that will do for today, and I will see you guys next time. Citizen Strife, signing off.